cooked. Absolutely cooked, and I am not waiting through one more glossy trailer, one more developer diary, or one more calm-eyed spokesman in a black hoodie, telling me they are excited to share this next evolution of player engagement before I call this thing what it is. Marathon is dead. It is corporate roadkill in a premium wrapper. Bungie and Sony have somehow engineered a reward pass that feels less like a reward and more like an invoice for unpaid overtime. First, let us hear from the High Council. We are committed to a flexible, premium progression framework that supports long-term player engagement across all cohorts. Look at this idiot. I speak a little bit of Bungie Sony bullshit. Pay us $10 now, grind later, remain anxious, and maybe, after enough unpaid labor, we will permit you to access a portion of the stuff you technically already bought. That is not a reward path. That is a shift schedule with better fonts. Meanwhile, extraction shooters are supposed to make you nervous inside the match. The route is dangerous, the loot is heavy, the footsteps are close, and the timer is cruel. Somebody on the ridge saw you healing, and somebody behind that door heard the reload. Normal design says the tension belongs in the mission. Marathon says no. The real tension should start after checkout. Can I justify the purchase? Can I fit this grind into my week? Or can I clock enough hours before the season changes and my enthusiasm dies in a ditch? It is hilarious, really, because Bungie has somehow moved the anxiety from the firefight straight into your calendar. Congratulations, runners. You just handed over about 1,000 lux in Bungie's fake money clown economy for the privilege of turning your hobby into a second job. That is the miracle here. Old reward passes at least pretended to be paths toward rewards. Marathon's version feels like a subscription to disappointment. You are not paying for content, you are paying to chase content. You are not buying cosmetics, you are buying guilt. You are buying that little voice, tapping on your skull at 9 in the evening, saying, "Hey genius, remember the thing you paid for, better report for duty." Naturally, some defender always crawls out of a vent and says every live service game does this. Right? Every sewer also has water in it, but that does not make this artisan sludge. We are not arguing over whether passes exist, we are arguing over whether this one is a stupid cash grab, and the answer is yes. Even the craziest, slimmiest battle passes usually understand basic scam etiquette. Finish the grind and the game tosses you enough premium currency to buy the next season's pass. It is cynical and manipulative, but fine. At least the machine performs courtesy while it robs you. Marathon does not even bother with the fake smile. Then comes another verse from the holy book of corporate vapors. Our premium ecosystem is designed to respect player time while sustaining future development. Respect player time. Look at this idiot. We are keeping your 1,120 lux. There is no going infinite, there is no meaningful rollover, and after you finish our treadmill, we will hand you an emblem, a gun style, maybe a trinket, and then point you back toward checkout, like a waiter charging extra for breathing the restaurant air. That is not respect. That is a toll booth with key art. Anyway, let us talk about the launch pass itself, because this is where the whole operation stops being merely cynical and becomes practical comedy. 1 character skin. 1 premium track, $10. 1 actual skin. Everything else is filler. Boosters, temporary buffs, currency drips too tiny to matter, menu dust, and store lint. It is empty calories, puffed up to look like value. You walk into a luxury dealership, slap down serious money, pop the hood on your dream car, and find one exhausted hamster running on a plastic wheel, while the salesman whispers performance package. That is Marathon. 1 hamster, 1 skin, and 1 premium shrug. Predictably, players noticed, because human beings can count to 1. Social media lit up, and reviews started landing like artillery. Then, the panic started. Suddenly extra skins are getting rushed into the mid-April update. Thief, assassin, quick, put actual groceries on the shelf, before the customers realize the pantry is basically decorative. Watch the pattern, because this is the dance every time. First, they underdeliver. Then, they get caught. Next comes the statement, and after that comes the, "we hear you." Then, they patch in the things that should have been there at launch. Finally, the defenders praise their responsiveness. Same stupid dance, every single time. Also, the no expiration talking point might be the funniest lie in the whole circus. Our passes do not expire, allowing players to engage at their own pace. Wonderful, magnificent, and so generous. I speak a little more world-specific nonsense, so let me translate again. The pass remains visible in your inventory, so marketing can say the system is consumer-friendly, but the seasonal wipe still bulldozes the broader context around your grind. Your icon survives, which is great, but your footing does not. Your momentum gets reset, your progression environment shifts, and your sense of completion gets dragged back into the mud by the cadence of the machine. That is not player freedom. That is a fear of missing out. Seriously, what are we doing here? We are pretending permanent behindness is a gift because the menu icon remains on screen. Finished is dangerous to these people. Finished means you might leave. Finished means you might play something else. Sony does not want finished, and Bungie does not want finished. They want almost done. They want one more week, one more top-up, and one more season. The whole system is built around making sure you never quite arrive. That is the trick. That is always the trick. Meanwhile, the great 20 Lux miracle is still making me laugh. Bungie bumps the $10 bundle from 1,100 to 1,120, and stands there like it has solved famine. 20 extra fake coins. 20. What exactly does 20 Lux buy? Nothing useful, nothing meaningful, and nothing that matters. It is ghost currency. It sits in your wallet like an unfinished thought, whispering that you are almost close enough to afford something else, if only you add a little more money. That is not generosity. That is store psychology. That is bait with a calculator. Personally, I love the language around tricks this petty. We wanted to improve the value proposition. No, you wanted a remainder. We heard the community. No, you heard screaming. We are committed to providing more choice. No, you are committed to leaving each purchase just incomplete enough to tug the player back into the store. Look at this idiot. It is a cheap move, a cheap instinct, and a cheap soul. That extra 20 Lux is the digital equivalent of finding a nickel in a gutter and being told the economy is healed. Beyond the money, the aesthetic needs its own dragging, because this new version feels intentionally bland. It is not ugly in an interesting way, or rough in a memorable way. It is bland, flattened, washed, and uglified for broad appeal to a demographic that exists nowhere except PowerPoint decks and executive fantasies. The classic version had identity because it trusted itself. The classic version had bite because it was not terrified of personality. This new version looks like it was dragged into a boardroom and scrubbed with consultant soap until every sharp edge dissolved. Old Marathon felt like a world. New Marathon feels like a brand refresh for people who call food product. Objectively, the earlier design was better, because it was not trying to lecture anybody. That is the real difference. It simply existed, it had confidence, and it had a face. Current Marathon feels like it wants to explain itself, using phrases like broader onboarding appeal and reduced visual friction. To whom? Show me the mythical customer who fears style, hates distinction, and only buys games after every memorable element has been sterilized into a luxury sneaker ad. That audience does not exist, yet every franchise gets flattened trying to impress it. Weapon charms deserve mockery too. They are tiny trinkets dangling off the side of your gun, in an extraction shooter full of movement goblins and aim freaks, who will erase you the second you stop to admire your premium keychain. Who exactly are these for? Who pauses in the middle of a sweaty firefight and thinks, hold on before I get folded, let me appreciate the craftsmanship on my ornament? Nobody. Nobody with a pulse. The only person getting a meaningful look at your expensive little charm is the guy looting your corpse. During all this, the suspicious art fiasco walks onto the deck like one more rotten beam in an already sagging hull. Certain original assets looked awfully close to the work of an independent artist, and Bungie's response carried the energy of a shrug wearing a badge. Internal review problem. Pipeline miss oops. In any serious production, leaving somebody else's fingerprints in your $1,000,000 product is not a cute mistake. That is a process failure. Sloppiness like that tells you something about the machine. If the art review is loose enough for this, why should anybody trust the progression economy, the reward structure, or the care being taken anywhere else? Sloppiness leaks, it never stays in one compartment. Then we drag the extraction streak mechanic into the light, and once again, the average player gets exposed as sacrificial material. We are creating aspirational skill expression loops for competitive engagement. There it is. There is the devil's poetry. If you are not in the top 1% of sleepless maniacs, treating every lobby like a national exam, you are content for the top 1%. Lose the streak, lose progress, extend the grind, and increase the pressure. Play more. That is not elegant design. That is a skill issue tax on ordinary adults with jobs, dishes, families, bad knees, tired eyes, and maybe the dangerous desire to stand up from the chair once in a while. Average players are not the stars of Marathon, they are the ecosystem feed. They are the warm bodies, carrying loot into the field so the sharks stay entertained, and the engagement graphs keep breathing. You are not the runner from the trailer, and you are not the sleek operator from the poster. You are the resource node. You are the body in the grass. You are the thing being farmed. Maybe the saddest part is that Bungie used to mean something else. Once upon a time, the name suggested polish, mechanical feel, confidence, and a player-first instinct other studios tried to copy. Now, it feels like another extraction company, except the material being mined is not ore or alien metal. Time is being extracted. Patience is being extracted. Money is being extracted, and trust is being extracted. Sony wants a hit, and Bungie wants a win. Meanwhile, the audience gets a one-skin premium track, a no-expiration treadmill, an insulting 20-coin bump, suspicious asset drama, and a sermon about value from the same people emptying their pockets. So here is the final diagnosis from your ragged broken English on the emergency channel. This project is cooked. The pass is abysmal, the strategy is transparent, and the people steering it come off like talentless hacks with a spreadsheet where their soul should be. It is a 10 out of 10 disaster. Bye.